Nearly 40 million tons of seaweed are produced every year. If gathered together, this slimy mass of biomass would be enough to clog the entire Suez Canal, paralyzing vital maritime choke points after just a few days of growth. So how can what was once a maritime nightmare transform into a billion-dollar food market, while also becoming a carbon-absorbing machine more effective than the Amazon rainforest? This transformation begins with fast-moving vessels harvesting seaweed beds from the ocean floor. Once lifted from the water, the seaweed is transported to processing plants within 24 hours to lock in freshness. There, industrial drying systems remove moisture, condensing the essence of the ocean into thin sheets of dried seaweed. From a cornerstone of traditional cuisine, seaweed is standardized into convenient snack products, rich in minerals and high in economic value. At the same time, in degraded marine regions, seaweed is cultivated as a giant biological filter. It absorbs millions of tons of carbon, while rebuilding habitats for thousands of marine species, directly reviving ecosystems on the brink of collapse. In this video, Agriculture Insight decodes the extraordinary power of seaweed, the green gold that remains vastly underestimated compared to its true potential. When it comes to sheer abundance, the world is home to more than 30,000 species of seaweed, spanning environments from tropical coral reefs to ice-covered polar regions. Yet few people realize that seaweed's slimy texture is in fact its most unique biological armor. It acts both as a flexible, rope-like structure that allows seaweed to stretch and sway with violent waves, and as a moisture-locking membrane that prevents dehydration when tides recede. Although Asia accounts for 97% of global seaweed production, each country holds a very different strategic card. China dominates industrial-scale seaweed processing, supplying thickening agents for the additives market, materials that quietly provide smoothness to lipstick, toothpaste, and processed foods. South Korea and Japan, by contrast, are masters of value elevation. They transform seaweed into the soul of sushi and kimbap, driving the price of each dried sheet to dozens of times higher than its raw form. At the opposite end of the spectrum, Indonesia and Northern Europe are pioneering seaweed as a strategic ecological weapon. This power lies in seaweed's whole-body absorption ability. Every surface can absorb nutrients, rather than relying on roots like terrestrial plants. As a result, in regions with dense seaweed growth, excess fertilizer residues and heavy metals in the water can drop dramatically after just a single growth cycle, directly eliminating the causes of oxygen depletion that suffocate fish and shrimp. And now, we arrive at the process everyone has been waiting for. Each year, more than 30,000 tons of dried seaweed are exported from South Korea through high-tech production lines, generating over $700 million in revenue, surpassing even the export value of fresh pears and many other major fruit commodities. In South Korea, the peak of the green gold harvest typically begins in November, when seawater temperatures drop below 12 degrees Celsius, the ideal threshold for seaweed to reach maximum thickness and nutrient density. However, the operation only truly scales up once the blades reach 15 to 20 centimeters in length. This is the golden size that allows mechanical harvesting systems to precisely trim the upper portion without damaging the root structure, ensuring that every 15 days a new crop is ready to regenerate. Specialized vessels equipped with drum harvesters over 1 meter in diameter head offshore. These massive rotating drums function like giant wheels, rolling along cultivation lines and lifting dozens of meters of biomass out of the water at once. Here, high-speed circular cutting blades, spinning at thousands of revolutions per minute, sweep across the nets like an industrial clipper, shaving only the upper fronds while leaving exactly 5 centimeters of the base firmly anchored to the substrate. The entire process is powered by a fully hydraulic system. The moment the seaweed leaves the cutting blades, high-capacity suction hoses pull the cascading biomass directly into pre-washed tanks. Immediately afterward, mechanical compression systems squeeze out excess water before the seaweed is packed into specialized mesh bags weighing up to 800 kilograms each. Finally, onboard cranes hoist these massive bags onto barges for overnight transport back to shore. This closed-loop operation allows tens of tons of seaweed to be processed within just a few hours, locking in biological freshness before the first light of dawn. If net-based cultivation forms the backbone of Asia's seaweed industry, then on the other side of the globe, the North Atlantic relies on a very different resource: vast, natural kelp forests, anchored to rocky coastal seabeds, where biomass density can reach 20–30 kilograms of fresh seaweed per square meter during peak season. During the harvesting season, small to mid-sized fishing vessels approach mature kelp beds near shore. Crews haul massive kelp fronds directly onto the deck by hand or with low-power mechanical winches, then selectively cut approximately 60–70% of the blade length, leaving the holdfast and basal stem firmly attached to the seabed. With this method, kelp forests can regenerate almost completely within just 3 to 5 months, depending on water conditions and light availability. On deck, the seaweed is cleaned and roughly sorted, then bundled and transported back to shore the same day. This steady flow of raw material supplies dietary supplements, animal feed, and organic fertilizers, where biological renewability is valued more highly than short-term yield. Unlike industrialized models, this harvesting approach treats seaweed as a living component of the marine ecosystem, extracting just enough to allow the ocean time to recover, rather than pushing it to exhaustion. At the opposite end of the spectrum lies a far more meticulous approach. Hand harvesting remains the gold standard in regions with rugged coastlines or within strictly protected marine areas, such as Brittany or Connemara. Only during extreme low tide can harvesters access the exposed rock shelves, where they carefully cut individual blades of kelp or dulse using scissors or small knives. What defines this method is absolute selectivity. Only seaweed leaves meeting the highest standards of cleanliness and bioactive compound concentration are taken. It is this painstaking precision that elevates the harvest into a premium raw material, reserved exclusively for luxury cosmetics and high-grade pharmaceutical extracts, sectors where cellular purity is valued far above sheer volume. But harvesting is only the first half of the journey. In South Korea, the true value of seaweed is only unlocked once it enters a closed-loop processing transformation, where every variable, from moisture levels to cellular structure, is tightly controlled. The journey of a single gim sheet is, in essence, a race against time. The moment the seaweed leaves the ocean, the raw material must be processed immediately to lock in freshness and suppress enzymes that would otherwise degrade quality. Inside the factory, the cleaning process takes place in massive intake tanks, where water temperatures are kept below 10 Celsius to prevent the onset of decomposition. Instead of using high-pressure water jets that could damage the delicate blades, the system relies on vertical axis agitators to generate slow, controlled vortex flows, preserving the integrity of the seaweed's fibrous structure. At the same time, millions of fine air bubbles released from the bottom of the tanks seep into every fold of the leaves, gently dislodging sand, sediment, and attached organisms, impurities that often hide within microscopic crevices, using buoyant force and the natural circulation of rising air. After cleaning, the seaweed is fed into high-speed cutting machines, where it is shredded into fine strands measuring 2 to 5 millimeters in length. This size is a deliberate technical calculation, small enough to ensure even dispersion, yet structurally intact enough to allow the fibers to interlock. The entire operation is carried out in a fully closed system, maximizing nutrient retention while preventing oxidation from ambient air. The mixture then moves immediately into slow agitation conditioning tanks for 20 to 40 minutes, where the seaweed is rehydrated and its polysaccharides are released. Gentle paddles maintain a continuous, low shear flow, producing a stable suspension with consistent viscosity. As a result, the seaweed fibers remain evenly distributed and ready for sheet forming without clumping. At this stage, the seaweed's first recognizable form officially emerges through a critical shaping process. The seaweed is blended with water at a precisely calibrated ratio, after which metered pumping systems spread the mixture onto moving mesh molds. Low-pressure spray nozzles, programmed with exacting precision, distribute the slurry so that every square centimeter of the mesh receives the same amount of material. This is the moment when a GIM sheet takes on its initial structure, demanding extreme uniformity to prevent rippling or warping once moisture is removed. Next, the seaweed enters a multi-stage drying chamber, a long tunnel system divided into strictly controlled temperature zones ranging from 40 to 60 degrees Celsius. Rather than using high heat for rapid dehydration, the factory relies on high-capacity recirculating warm airflow to draw out moisture gradually. Controlled drying process is the key to locking in the seaweed's signature ocean aroma and preserving its deep, glossy blue-black color, while also protecting heat-sensitive vitamins, such as vitamins A and C, from degradation. At this stage, the sheets are not yet released for consumption. Instead, they are stacked, aligned, and bundled into temporary batches. These bundles of dried seaweed are sealed in moisture-resistant packaging, allowing for short-term storage and internal transport, without altering the sheet's color or their inherent biological crispness. The GIM then moves directly into a fully automated, precision seasoning line. The sheets travel along a low-speed roller conveyor, ensuring uniform surface exposure to a network of low-pressure micro-spray nozzles. Here, a thin layer of refined vegetable oil, most commonly sesame oil or neutral vegetable oils, is applied with tightly controlled dosing at 1.5 grams of oil per 100 grams of dried seaweed. In parallel, fine salt and signature seasoning blends such as mustard, wasabi, or proprietary formulations are evenly dispersed, keeping flavor variation between sheets below 5%. After seasoning, the GIM enters a second roasting chamber, where exposure time is shorter, approximately 30 seconds, while the temperature is precisely calibrated at around 180 degrees Celsius. The purpose of this final roast is to lock in seasoning aromas, evaporate excess oil, and create a uniformly dry, crisp surface, the defining factor behind the clean, audible snap that characterizes premium-grade GIM. Once the GIM reaches a fully dry, crisp state and is evenly infused with seasoning, the automated packaging line is activated. Robotic pick-and-place arms, operating at speeds of over 100 units per minute, swiftly transfer each stack of sheets into plastic containers according to pre-programmed portion specifications. Before the process is completed, a specialized desiccant packet is placed at the base of each container. The package is then sealed with a heat-bonded film using infrared sealing technology, completely isolating the contents from ambient moisture and preserving the product's signature crispness with absolute consistency. Now, let's step into the kitchen, where one of the most iconic dishes made from seaweed comes to life: sushi. On the work surface, a layer of still-warm rice is spread evenly over a sheet of dried nori, which is maintained at 7 to 8% moisture content before use. The filling is placed neatly at the center, and everything is hand-rolled with controlled pressure, just enough for the seaweed to wrap tightly around the rice without breaking its structure. The nori begins to absorb moisture from the rice, shifting from crisp to pliable and locking the filling firmly inside. At this moment, the seaweed releases a subtle ocean aroma and deep umami notes, blending with the softness of the rice and the natural sweetness of the fish. Beyond sushi, another iconic dish made from seaweed is seaweed soup. The cooking process begins by soaking dried seaweed in cool water to rehydrate it, allowing the strands to expand and regain their natural structure. After being rinsed and trimmed, the the seaweed is briefly sautéed with sesame oil, then simmered with water or broth at a moderate temperature for a short period. During cooking, the seaweed releases essential minerals and bioactive compounds directly into the soup, including iodine, calcium, iron, and soluble polysaccharides. Because the soup is not cooked for long, many heat-sensitive micronutrients are preserved. As a result, seaweed soup is considered a nutrient-dense yet light dish, commonly consumed to replenish minerals, support metabolic balance, and aid recovery in everyday meals. Among the roughly 950 recorded species of sea urchins, only 18 are harvested commercially, with major catches coming from countries such as Chile, the United States, Russia, and Canada. Within this select group, a few stand above the rest: the red sea urchin of North America and the black sea urchin of Japan. Prized for their large, luscious roe, vibrant color, and rich, sweet flavor. This rarity explains why uni ranks among the most expensive seafood in the world, with prices reaching as high as $300 to $500 USD per kilogram, making it a prized indulgence sought after by the elite. Dominating over 80% of global consumption, Japan's sea urchin industry generates hundreds of millions of dollars each year, all from a single, one-of-a-kind ingredient, uni. For those who have never tasted it, imagine a spoonful of sea egg butter, silky and melting instantly on the tongue, leaving a rich, briny finish as alluring as soy-marinated egg yolk, with a hint of sweetness and a whisper of seaweed. Yet the story of sea urchins reaches far beyond the plate. They are the gardeners of the ocean, tending kelp forests and maintaining balance in the seafloor ecosystem. But when natural predators like sea otters vanish, or when urchins graze away every kelp spore, their populations can explode, turning lush marine landscapes into desolate urchin barrens. Even as the world's largest harvester and importer, Japan still cannot satisfy its immense domestic appetite for uni. This demand, coupled with the collapse of wild stocks, has sparked a shift toward a more sustainable future. Farming sea urchins in controlled environments, from tiny drifting larvae to golden road treasures. The industrial farming process of sea urchins begins with the careful selection of healthy broodstock with well-developed gonads. By injecting a potassium chloride solution to stimulate the sea urchin's body to contract and release its gametes, and then using gravity to aid collection, technicians obtain pale yellow sperm from the males and thick white eggs from the females, ready for the next step of fertilization. Sperm and eggs are collected under sterile conditions, then combined in tanks filled with treated seawater, maintained at a stable temperature of around 15 to 20 degrees Celsius and a salinity of 32 to 35 Vis. Once fertilized, the eggs quickly begin cell division and develop into pluteus larvae, tiny, transparent creatures with delicate arms used for swimming and feeding. At this stage, they are reared separately in specialized tanks, where fresh microalgae serve as their primary food source, supporting steady growth before they transition into the adult stage. After the larval stage, the sea urchins are transferred to large tanks equipped with rocks or attachment frames to support the formation and growth of their hard shells. When they reach the size of a clenched fist after 6 to 8 months, sea urchins are grown in large sea cages or tanks, fed fresh kelp or brown seaweed that directly determines the quality of their uni roe and market value. Over the next 4 to 8 weeks, the urchins absorb maximum nutrition, their gonads swelling to perfection, reaching the ideal state for harvest. However, larval survival rates are extremely low, making sea urchin farming challenging and limited, with success rates of only around 10%. As a result, the majority of commercial sea urchin supply still comes from wild harvesting, leading us to the next chapter, the journey of harvesting from the depths of the sea. From May to August each year, as the sea warms and daylight hours lengthen, sea urchins enter their spawning season, a time when their gonads, the rich, golden-orange roe, reach peak development, signaling a bumper harvest and the highest profits of the year. With hand diving, it may sound simple, but in reality, it's a trade that demands physical strength, skill, and finesse. Divers equip themselves with a mask, snorkel, anti-spike gloves, and, most importantly, a curved iron hook or a specialized brush. They descend to depths of 2 to 10 meters, where sea urchins cling to rocks, nestle among seaweed, or sometimes hide in crevices as if playing a game of hide-and-seek. Each lift of the hand must be precise, avoiding breaking the shell, damaging the roe inside, or getting pricked by the spines. Once collected, the urchins are placed into mesh pouches worn at the diver's side to prevent crushing, and brought back to the boat in batches. On average, a skilled diver can harvest between 100 and 300 sea urchins a day, depending on the fishing grounds and population density. The diligent divers understand that sea urchin populations have declined nearly tenfold compared to 50 years ago, so juvenile urchins must never be harvested. Selecting fully mature individuals is therefore a matter of experience, essential to maintaining ecosystem balance and ensuring the future growth of the population. Another highly effective method is bottom netting, a type of net designed differently from conventional fishing nets. As the net passes, sea urchins are swept in by the motion of the waves and the gentle pull of the vessel. This method allows for a much larger catch in a shorter time compared to hand diving, making it suitable for industrial-scale harvesting. However, its drawback is a higher damage rate. Urchins are more likely to be bumped, crushed, or mixed with seaweed and gravel, which directly affects the quality of the roe inside. Once the prized catch is secured, the fresh sea urchins are placed into special perforated plastic containers, lined with a layer of cloth or soft material to prevent breakage. They are then swiftly transported to processing plants to preserve their pristine condition before these delicate treasures can spoil. Here, the race against time begins as each one moves through a tightly controlled production line, where every step is designed to capture the very best of what they have to offer. At the start of the sea urchin processing line, containers from cold storage are moved to the raw material reception area. Each batch is emptied onto a feed conveyor, where workers perform an initial inspection. Damaged, spoiled, or dead urchins are removed immediately, keeping only those that are intact, with firm shells and meeting size standards. This meticulous attention at the intake stage is essential to ensuring the quality of the uni-roe inside. Once they pass the initial inspection, sea urchins are moved to the processing area, where the most crucial step takes place, splitting the shells. Workers use a specialized splitting tool with a sharp curved blade and a smart lever mechanism, achieving an average speed of 80 to 100 urchins per hour. By positioning the blade precisely along the seam between the two shell halves and applying a gentle twist, the urchin is neatly split open to reveal the edible treasure inside. At this moment, glistening golden orange lobes, the gonads, known as uni, are exposed in a light briny fluid. Although sea urchin spines are not venomous like those of lionfish, nor do they contain the potent neurotoxin tetrodotoxin found in pufferfish, workers still wear gloves to protect their hands from punctures and scratches, reduce the risk of infection, and maintain hygiene during handling. Splitting the shell is only half the journey. For the roe of the sea urchin, known as uni, is as smooth as cream, fragile and extremely sensitive to any physical contact, requiring the extraction process to be carried out with absolute precision and care. As soon as the shell is opened, workers use a fine metal spoon or a rounded-edge medical-grade plastic spoon to minimize tearing the delicate lobes. First, they gently remove the thin membrane and any shell fragments clinging to the roe, then skillfully slide the spoon underneath each unilobe, typically 5 arranged in a star pattern, lifting them out intact. Just one overly forceful or misaligned movement can break a lobe, greatly reducing its market value. Immediately after removal, the lobes are transferred to the manual cleaning station. Here, workers use tweezers or the tip of a small spoon to pick away any remaining strands of seaweed, connective tissue, or tiny debris. Some facilities also lightly rinse the uni with filtered seawater, both to remove impurities and to preserve its natural flavor. Once cleaned, the uni is placed in temporary holding trays and gently immersed in a diluted alum solution for 2 to 5 minutes, or in some cases up to 40 minutes depending on the roe's natural firmness. This step helps lock in the shape, enhance firmness, preserve the golden hue, and stabilize the distinctive taste, from its rich briny creaminess to a subtle sweet finish, meeting premium export standards. After soaking, the uni is drained and prepared for grading and packing, ready to leave the factory and grace the tables of fine dining establishments around the world. After processing, each piece of roe is carefully arranged by hand into specialized plastic trays or premium wooden boxes, depending on market requirements. This step demands both an eye for aesthetics and skilled precision. The roe must be placed in its most visually appealing orientation, kept intact without any damage, and each box must display uniformity in color and size. The finished boxes of uni, priced at around $100 to $500 USD, depending on grade and origin, are sealed, rapidly chilled, and moved to the final inspection area before being placed in deep cold storage, ready to make their way to high-end sushi restaurants or the most demanding export markets. One of the most common mistakes restaurants make when receiving uni is not using it immediately, instead storing it at overly low temperatures or allowing it to come into direct contact with ice, altering its flavor, stripping away its natural sweet creaminess, and compromising its delicate, smooth texture. From the depths of the sea to the finest dining tables, uni, ranging from the prized ingredient in premium Japanese sushi to a costly delicacy on international gourmet menus, carries the story of a fragile treasure that holds the full essence of the ocean. If Japan is the mackerel processing factory of the world, responsible for about 25% of global processed mackerel output, equipped with modern production lines and a wide range of exports across 5 continents, then the United States is the consumption giant. From May onward, rising water temperatures awaken the entire brackish ecosystem, ushering blue crabs into the most intensive harvesting season of the year. Before heading out to sea, bait is prepared simply but effectively. Chicken meat or low-value fish, cheap protein sources with strong odors that suit the blue crab's scavenging behavior and crawling for food reflex. The bait is placed inside square bottom set traps, the primary fishing gear of the commercial blue crab industry. The square shape allows the trap to remain stable on soft mud. One-way funnel entrances guide crabs inward while preventing escape, and the interior space is large enough to keep crabs alive while minimizing claw damage. Thanks to this design, each trap can yield 1 to 3 kilograms of crab per day, and a single vessel may operate from several hundred to over 1,000 traps, generating a large yet steady supply for live crab and soft-shell crab markets. However, blue crab harvesting is not confined solely to peak season. As water temperatures fall, crabs become less active and remain close to the seabed, reducing the effectiveness of fixed traps. To take advantage of this transitional period, light bottom trawling is permitted within very limited time windows, due to the risk of crab injury and direct impacts on benthic habitats. Alongside large-scale harvesting zones, blue crabs are still found close to shore, especially around river mouths and shallow lagoons. In long-established brackish water communities, residents simply follow the tidal rhythm, setting traps near the shoreline for 2 to 4 hours per cycle to collect live blue crabs. These catches often move directly from the landing site to family meals or local markets the same day, tightly linking crab fishing with the everyday rhythm of life in brackish coastal communities. Leaving the highly dynamic brackish waters, a portion of blue crabs is transported directly to processing plants within just a few hours, where every handling step must race against time. At the plant, the first step is icing and rapid chilling to suppress cellular respiration and enzymatic activity, key factors that preserve meat firmness, maintain natural sweetness, and minimize value loss throughout the cold chain. Not every individual is eligible to enter this processing line. Commercial-grade blue crabs typically require a carapace width of at least 5 inches, as only at this size does the meat yield sufficiently offset the costs of processing, transportation, and cold storage, ensuring economic efficiency across the entire operation. On the whole crab processing line, chilled crabs are transferred to the packaging area, where they are graded, non-conforming individuals are removed, and the remaining crabs are arranged in plastic trays. The crabs are then placed in a freezing chamber until the core temperature reaches approximately 18 degrees Celsius, ensuring complete freezing. Afterward, the glazing layer forms on the crab's surface to reduce moisture loss and oxidation. The crabs are finally packaged, arranged vertically, and secured to prevent damage during transportation and cold storage. In some processing facilities serving rapid consumption, boiled green crabs are also sprinkled with dry seasoning during packaging, allowing the product to be prepared immediately after opening and meeting on-site cooking habits. However, in order to extend shelf life and expand export markets, green crabs are further processed through advanced processing in the form of canned crab products. In the canned green crab processing procedure, immediately upon arrival at the factory, green crabs are placed into heat-resistant steel baskets and fully boiled for a short duration, typically 8 to 12 minutes, which is sufficient to coagulate proteins without causing excessive meat shrinkage. After boiling, the crabs are rapidly cooled using cold water and rinsed preliminarily to remove dirt and coagulated protein residues remaining on the surface before officially entering the carapace removal process. At this stage, the crab shells, gills, and other inedible parts are removed, while the meat remains inside the body in preparation for subsequent processing steps. In some factories, after removal of the carapace and inedible parts, the crabs are placed in metal trays and subjected to short-time steam heating in a sealed unit to maintain material temperature, reduce surface microbial contamination, and facilitate meat picking. This optional step depends on the production conditions and hygiene requirements of each facility. Meanwhile, in most factories, the meat picking process is carried out directly after the crabs have undergone preliminary heat treatment and cooling, without necessarily passing through the short-time heating step. This is the most important stage in the entire process, including meat picking, meat classification, and placing the crab meat into cans. This stage requires a high level of skill and meticulous handling to maintain the integrity of the meat structure, minimize shell fragments, and ensure the sensory quality of the product. Workers use specialized tools to pick the meat and place it directly into cans according to the appropriate meat grades. To ensure hygiene and food safety, workers are required to wear protective gloves and strictly comply with personal hygiene regulations throughout the operation. At the working speed of a skilled worker, approximately 10 to 15 crabs per hour can be processed, corresponding to 8 to 12 cans of crab meat, with a weight of approximately 150 to 200 grams per can, depending on crab size and meat yield. Crab meat is placed into pre-labeled metal cans or plastic containers, arranged neatly, and each container is weighed to ensure compliance with the specified product weight. Subsequently, all filled containers are transferred to the seaming area, where they are sealed using a seaming machine to ensure complete airtightness and prevent the ingress of microorganisms from the external environment. Immediately afterward, the products are sterilized at appropriate temperatures and durations to ensure food safety and extend the shelf life of the canned blue crab meat products. After sterilization, the containers are rapidly cooled, dried, and inspected for appearance and seal integrity before being packed into cartons. Products that meet the requirements are stored under appropriate conditions, ready for warehousing, transportation, and distribution. On the market, an 8-ounce container of pasteurized blue crab meat typically ranges from USD 25 to 40, approximately twice the price of an Atlantic salmon fillet of the same weight and approaching the price level of medium-sized frozen lobster tails. However, for professional chefs, this price is considered justified for a convenient ingredient that is best suited for dishes prioritizing the preservation of meat structure and minimizing intense heat treatment, in order to directly experience the distinctive natural sweetness of crab. Blue crab meat is not as rich or densely textured as king crab, nor does it deliver an immediate sense of luxury from the first bite. Its distinct value lies instead in a clean, delicate sweetness, with fine, moderately firm fibers that melt gradually and naturally, as if the flavor unfolds with each chew rather than bursting all at once. In the culinary culture of the Chesapeake Bay region, blue crabs are commonly steamed whole with the iconic Old Bay seasoning blend, a balanced mixture of celery salt, paprika, black pepper, and dried herbs. Diners crack the claws, lift the shell, and pick out strands of meat while still warm. The experience therefore places little emphasis on technique, focusing instead on the direct tactile interaction between hand and crab meat, where the sweetness is most pronounced when the crab is just cooked through, its structure intact and its moisture fully retained. When picked, blue crab reveals a rare quality. The meat holds its shape well, yet remains tender when bitten. This explains why Maryland crab cakes use minimal binders. A proper crab cake does not rely on heavy breading or excessive eggs. It uses just enough to hold the meat together so that when pan-seared, the exterior sets lightly, while the interior stays airy and loose, neither dense nor crumbly. Only a rare few rise beyond the role of a simple seasoning to become cultural heritage. Asin tibuok, crystallized from coconut husk ash and fired clay, with a deep mineral character and a whisper of smoke. Kalinamak, sharp-edged with its unmistakable sulfurous aroma. Bamboo salt, rounded and savory, leaving a warm mineral finish after 9 firings over open flame. And Guérande, pure and delicate, lightly crisp and slow to dissolve in the sea breeze of France. Today, join Agriculture Insight as we delve into the journey of the 4 most expensive and rare salts on the planet, where essence is distilled from humble raw materials, artisanal craftsmanship creates luxury, and hidden minerals become culinary symbols of an entire region's identity. Our first stop brings us to Bohol Island, a land of heritage coconut groves and some of the saltiest tidal waters in the Philippines. Here, Asin tibuok, one of the rarest salts on Earth, stands on the brink of extinction, with fewer than 5 families still preserving its traditional, closely guarded craft. The process begins with the careful selection of fully matured coconuts. The first step is husking, during which skilled artisans remove the shell and flesh, preserving only the thick, fibrous husk, the sole material whose capillary structure is perfectly suited to absorbing and retaining salt crystals. These husks are then densely packed into coastal marsh pits known as bonbon, where they are submerged in seawater for 3 to 6 months. Guided by the rhythm of the tides, the coconut fibers act as both a natural filter and reservoir, quietly drawing salt and oceanic minerals deep into every strand. At this stage, a natural exchange reaction takes place. The interaction between tannins in the coconut husk and trace minerals from the seawater gradually turns the fibers a distinctive black, clear evidence that the husks are fully mineralized. This transformation signals the artisans that the husks are ready to be retrieved and dried under the intense tropical sun. Once the mineral concentration reaches its ideal level, thousands of coconut husks are loaded onto bamboo rafts and transported to the processing site. At the workshop, the salt-soaked coconut husks are stacked into large mounds and burned continuously for 7 full days. Throughout this intense transformation by fire, artisans maintain a constant 24/7 watch, carefully controlling the temperature while repeatedly dousing the burning husks with seawater. Under the force of extreme heat, moisture evaporates, leaving salt and oceanic minerals to concentrate and accumulate, transforming the ash into a dense mineral reservoir. The final product is gasang, a fine white ash with an exceptionally high salt content. With the saline ash prepared, the process shifts to the construction of a natural filtration system. Fresh buri palm leaves are cut into sections approximately 40 centimeters long, then layered and interwoven to line the interior of massive bamboo funnels. The choice of buri leaves is a deliberate technical decision. Their rigid veins withstand the pressure of the ash mass, while their naturally water-resistant surface channels the concentrated salt solution downward without loss. Once securely reinforced, the gasang ash is poured in and compacted into a uniform block, after which artisans begin the leaching process using thousands of liters of seawater. Over the course of several hours, the water percolates through the ash, dissolving the concentrated salt crystals and trace oceanic minerals. At this stage, the ash functions like a natural carbon filter, removing impurities and leaving behind only the purest essence. Tasik, an amber-colored liquid with a saturated mineral concentration, nearly 10 times saltier than seawater. Yet it is precisely this saturated salinity that creates the ideal conditions for crystallization. At the firing site, hundreds of hand-molded clay pots are packed tightly together atop long hearths built from hardened ash and stone. This seamless arrangement forms a uniform heat-retaining surface maintained at 200 to 300 degrees Celsius, minimizing energy loss and ensuring that every vessel is subjected to the same intensity of flame. The oval shape of each pot is equally intentional. Its structure optimizes convective heat flow, forcing salt crystals to form evenly from the core outward. Notably, each pot is used only once, rendering every salt block a singular, unrepeatable creation. To prevent thermal shock and structural cracking, artisans keep a pan of tussock boiling constantly nearby, replenishing the pots with hot liquid continuously over 24 hours. This sustained pressure of concentration is the decisive factor, allowing salt crystals to compact tightly, bond durably, and achieve absolute density uniformity from the base to the rim of the vessel. After roughly a full day and night, when thermal cracks begin to run along the body of the clay pots, a clear sign that the salt blocks have fully matured and all residual moisture has escaped, the kiln is finally allowed to go dark. Cooling then occurs naturally, enabling the salt to stabilize its structure and compact further from within. The result is Asin Tibuok in its finished form. Stone-hard, uniquely oval blocks with a sharp, assertive salinity, a gentle smoky finish, and faint fruity notes drawn from the coconut husk. Priced at up to USD 100 per block, on par with England's famed Maldon Salt Company, or premium smoked salts from the Pacific Northwest, asin tibuok is often shaved directly over dishes by discerning chefs, used as a luxurious finishing salt. In its homeland of the Philippines, however, this salt is the soul of humble fare. From bowls of lugaw rice porridge to crisp green mangoes, where its smoky depth elevates the simplest ingredients into something unforgettable. Since ancient times, humans have used bamboo as a vessel for storing food, but only in Korea has this plant been elevated into a biological furnace, giving rise to one of the most expensive salts on Earth, 9 times fired purple bamboo salt. The journey begins with the careful selection of moso bamboo, aged 3 to 5 years, the stage at which bamboo sap contains its highest concentration of silicon and trace minerals. In heritage bamboo forests, only culms that meet strict standards of thickness and maturity are harvested, then cut into uniform sections, leaving one natural node intact to create exceptionally durable containers. Inside the workshops, artisans hand-pack pure sea salt into each bamboo tube. To achieve the required density, the salt is compressed under intense pressure to eliminate all air pockets, a critical technique that ensures full contact between the salt crystals and the bamboo walls, while preventing internal air expansion that could cause the tubes to rupture during firing. The decisive step in this stage is sealing the open end with mineral-rich yellow clay. Technically, this clay acts as a pressure lock. It prevents the salt from escaping while forcing the bamboo's valuable sap to be driven back into the salt core under the force of the kiln, allowing the bamboo's minerals to fully permeate the salt. To initiate the transformation, the tightly sealed bamboo tubes are stood upright inside stone kilns, fired exclusively with pine wood to produce stable heat and a clean, aromatic flame. During the first firing at 800 degrees Celsius, the bamboo casing burns away completely, releasing abundant sap that flows outward to envelop the salt core. This layer of bamboo resin, together with pine essential oils, acts as a natural catalyst, neutralizing acidic compounds and removing heavy metals from the raw sea salt. Yet a single firing is not enough to achieve absolute purity. After each cycle, the solidified salt is removed, crushed into a fine powder, and repacked into fresh bamboo tubes to begin the next round. This process continues for more than 30 days, culminating in the 9th firing, when temperatures are driven to extreme levels exceeding 1,300 degrees Celsius. At this point, the salt undergoes a complete physical transformation. Its crystals no longer remain solid, but melt and flow like molten lava, glowing red-hot within the kiln. Though labor-intensive and exacting, this prolonged ritual is a definitive commitment to quality. With each passage through fire, concentrations of potassium, magnesium, and organic sulfur are further intensified, while residual impurities are fully broken down, gradually shifting the salt's color from ashen gray to a deep, mystical purple, and endowing it with exceptional antioxidant properties. To recover the finished product, artisans must use specialized steel rods to guide the thick, molten salt out of the kiln before it has a chance to solidify. As it cools, this molten mass recrystallizes into amber-hard slabs of salt, marked by their signature deep purple hue. What follows is a rigorous process of selection. Each slab is broken apart by hand to remove all traces of ash and residue, preserving only the purest inner core. The final salt delivers a profound salinity, followed by an unmistakable finish of pinewood smoke. On average, producing just 1 kilogram of purple bamboo salt requires the consumption of tens of kilograms of raw salt and several tons of pine wood, burned continuously over many days. This extreme expenditure of materials combined with intense thermal pressure fundamentally alters the salt's mineral structure, elevating it far beyond the role of a simple seasoning. Instead, bamboo salt becomes a therapeutic mineral substance, prized for its alkalinity and powerful detoxifying properties. This is why it holds a central place in deep cleansing and holistic wellness regimens, an achievement that ordinary sea salt can rarely attain.